Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jim Kleiber Show. This is the live show at night. I'm switching it up this week. Today is Monday, October 12th, 2020, and it is 9 p.m. here in the Eastern Time Zone in the United States. Today is going to be a nighttime show. Wanted to experiment with it this week and just see how it goes doing it at night. One, to see how I feel doing a show at night. Two, to see if it's easier for people in the US to join and participate live if they want to contribute. If you want to contribute comments and join the interactive show for that. And also, I think to see if this works better as a show that's at the end of the day to reflect on what happened during the day. So instead of the 1 p.m., let's catch the news that just happened in the morning, this is more of a let's look at the end of the day and let's reflect before we go to bed. Again, this is an experiment. Pretty much isn't life just an experiment? We try things, we see what happens, and we try other things and we see what happens. Then we try some other things and then we see what happens with that. I'm still going with my beard experiment for so far, and I don't know if I'll ever have this beard experiment again, so it's fun to play sometimes. I'll be honest, I don't really know too much what happened in the news today, and it feels great. I checked into Twitter a little bit, and I watched the news maybe a little bit, but I think there was a hearing for a Supreme Court justice today. For a confirmation hearing. I think Trump had a rally today. But overall, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. Gosh, how much do we let the news run our lives? Maybe I'm speaking on behalf of just myself, but I imagine many of you out there clue into the news a lot more than you realize you clue into it. I know that I don't realize how almost automatically I'll check on Twitter or check on news channels just to see what's going on. It's almost like this addiction, this reflex that something happens or a commercial comes on and I switch and I try to figure out what's going on with the news. And it can drive us crazy at times. There's not much we can do about a lot of things that are happening in the world, especially if we're sitting at home during a pandemic. What can we do? If something happens in Portland, Oregon, or if something happens in Chicago, or if something happens even in my own town, I'm not really leaving the house much at all. I don't know about you all, but how much are we really getting out there and having any ability to change the vast majority of the things that we hear in the news? Or even read on the internet. It's all blending together. But, sitting there going on Twitter and hearing about protests that are happening somewhere in the country, it's like, okay, maybe I can have an impact on that. I could start to spread some of my knowledge and my opinions online. But protests are happening in Nigeria. What can I do about that? Maybe I can do something, but it's just, there's too much stuff. There's too much. Saying, please help, please donate your time, donate your money, donate your energy and your love to change the situation. I don't know about you, but I think sometimes I just feel tired. I watch the news and I just feel so tired. Like, okay, good, this thing's happening, but what? I have to choose one thing to work on. And if I don't have that one thing, if I try to help everything, I can't really get too much done. I don't know. It's almost, they talk about a digital detox, and I wonder how much of it is also just this news detox. I remember reading a book by Tim Ferriss called The 4-Hour Workweek, and I think it was in that book he talked about how he was trying to refrain from looking at the news. And I've oscillated with this back and forth, this idea of wanting to stay clued into what's going on and really up to date. And then also saying, I just want to focus on things. And sometimes being at the beck and whim of the, if that's the right idiom, being at the beck and whim of the the media, like the news stream, can really throw us in different directions. I don't know. How about you all? Did you watch the news a lot today? Did you listen to the news? Do you watch it? Do you listen to it? Do you read about it on Twitter? Do you read about it on Facebook? Do you read physical newspapers? Do you read digital newspapers? Do you read blogs? Where do you get a lot of your news? Do you listen to news about everything? Do you listen to financial news more than you listen to political news? Is it mostly political news that you hear? What about sports news? What about entertainment news? What about science news, like scientific news? Wow, what about COVID-19 news? Gosh, there's a lot of news to listen to, isn't there? This hey, look at me, pay attention to me. I'm important, and this is going to impact your life. And maybe I'll ask you what to do and how to help me, change this situation. Or sometimes I'll just tell you that the world's falling apart. Not all news is telling us that the world's falling apart. Sometimes the news tells us of scientific breakthroughs. The news can make us feel so many different emotions. Anger, fear, excitement, joy, pride, relief, kind of love, unity, confusion, uncertainty, confidence, like so many things just through scrolling through a Twitter feed or popping on the local news. And it's just, I think sometimes one of the best things for ourselves is to just disconnect from that steady stream of other people's emotions and just pay attention to how we're feeling. I know I may sound like a broken record at some points, but I thought about it a lot today, and just this idea of emotional communication. And in communication, are we listening to how other people are feeling? Are we listening to how we're feeling? Are we saying how we're feeling? What are we communicating with? Who are we communicating with? And what elements of communication? So is it possible to listen and try to understand how somebody else is feeling and listen and understand how we're feeling at the same time? Sounds pretty hard. Is it possible for me to focus like really intently on what's happening on a TV screen and also, be aware of the people around me and how they're feeling? It's also pretty hard. A lot of times when I'm very focused on the screen and trying to hear what they're saying, I'm tuning out the people around me because I really want to hear what the screen is, what the people on the screen are saying. And so somebody may say something in my surroundings and I don't even hear it, or I hear the end of it and I miss the beginning because I'm so intently focused forward. I notice that happens to me a lot when I'm, looking at my phone and reading. Maybe somebody around me was saying something and I don't hear it because I hear it, but I don't get it because I'm so locked in on my phone. Because it's really hard to read and listen at the same time. I mean, and maybe some other people can do it really well, but for me, it is a struggle to really focus on reading, because I often read out loud in my own head when I'm reading. So like this reading out loud in my own head while trying to hear somebody else. It's almost like to hear my own voice inside my head, I have to shut out external sounds, right? I have to turn off a lot of the senses that I have. If I'm feeling a lot of, like I'm feeling my feet that are cold right now, or if I'm, hearing the sounds of the sump pump running, the water running on the side, then I'm not necessarily hearing what I'm saying in my own head. So I think many of us spend a lot of our day listening to other people, either listening on television or listening in conversation occasionally. But a lot of times like absorbing and listening and receiving these broadcasts from the TV, from the internet, from Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, all these different platforms where people are broadcasting kind of how they're feeling and what they're doing and what they're believing and thinking and all these things. to the world, and we're receiving all of that instead of thinking about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're doing, and paying attention to kind of our own situation. And today I did a little more of that. It felt great. I can't tell you how relieving it can be sometimes to just not. It's almost like to put the world on mute and just pay attention to what's going on with us. If we quiet down all the external noises, we turn the TV on mute, we turn the internet off on our phone, or maybe we put our computer away. It's not like it's automatically quiet. I mean, anyone who's gone to a silent meditation can tell you, even though there's absolute silence, there's a lot of noise happening. It's just happening inside one's head or one's body, So even if you don't have thoughts going through your mind, maybe your stomach is gurgling, or your ankle is cracking, or or you can hear like gas that's building up in your chest or something along those lines. There are sounds and sights and smells and touches and sensations that are there. We just sometimes can get so overwhelmed by the ones that are more loud or the ones that are more visually distracting, and not realize the other ones are still there. It reminds me of, I think somebody was saying that in New York it finally got quiet because of the pandemic and people could hear the birds. Like, there are birds here? The birds make noise? I noticed that even here in the suburbs. I go out for a call with somebody and I want to do like a call, or I want to do a voice recording on my phone. And I'm like, okay, let me go try to find a quiet spot. First, I have to find a spot where it's not windy. It's tough. I mean, the wind is almost constantly blowing. If it's not blowing at all, it's quite weird. It's can freak me out at times when the wind is, just calm. There's nothing. So there's almost a constant wind, which can impact the sound recording. What else? There's also birds. There are lots of birds out here. I didn't realize it. There are robins, there are orioles, there are pigeons, there are crows, there are chickadees, there are woodpeckers, there are blue jays, there are cardinals, there are so many birds. And with a lot of the traffic of the city, it's hard to hear them. But here, you can hear them. When the traffic dies down, when you turn off that noise, there's still noise. It's just other noise. And we can hear that noise and listen to that conversation instead. What else is there? There's squirrels. Oh my goodness, there are so many squirrels fighting with each other, chasing each other, looking at me because they think I'm going to take their acorn or who knows what. There's a lot happening in our world just locally. Locally in our surroundings, but also internally, that when we turn off some of the loud noises coming from afar, when we turn off some of the loud voices coming from the internet or coming from TV or other telecommunications, we can start having the conversation with ourselves. So, I don't know. I mean, I look at some of these podcast episodes and I see it as me having a conversation with myself and with some of you. It's not trying to... let me pause. I think one of the challenges I have in running shows like this is that I want to do a show that helps you have more conversation with yourself, if that makes sense. I like this idea of turning the media almost on its head. A lot of the media is shouting and telling you what's happening with other people. And I kind of want to take what's happening with other people and present it to you in a way that could help you reflect on what's happening with yourself. I've played with this idea in my head for a few years, probably ever since Trump got elected, but this idea of reflective media. It seems like a lot of the other media focuses on projecting or being more projective, or I like, because it rhymes, projective, whereas I want to be more reflective. So helping you maybe dive a little more deeply into how you're feeling or what you're thinking, or how news stories impact you and how it relates. So one news story, for example, that I heard about today was Senator Gary Peters from Michigan had an article that came out in Elle magazine, I believe. And the article was talking about how he and his wife, how his wife had an abortion. And apparently he's the first senator, U.S. senator, to talk about personally being involved with an abortion. And what else did it say in the article? It said, so just a quick summary is that his wife got pregnant and it was going to be, I think, their second child, and they were both excited for the baby. At 4 months, I think the amniotic sac, the fluid surrounding the baby, broke. And so the doctor said that there was very low chance, or maybe no chance, of the baby surviving. Shortly thereafter, a couple weeks later or something, that the baby had a heartbeat. And the doctor said something like the mother's uterus may not survive, and something about like the health of the mother would be seriously in danger, and was strongly advising an abortion. But the political situation didn't let that doctor give an abortion. And I think the doctor suggested that they go to another doctor who would let it happen. And so Senator Peters talking about how the abortion wasn't because they wanted to get rid of the baby or because they wanted to not have a baby. It was because, they actually wanted the baby very badly, and the baby wasn't going to make it. And without doing anything, it was going to endanger the mother's life or reproductive health in the future. And I have my, it's just, I appreciate him opening up and talking a little more deeply on the complexity of this issue. It's not a black and white issue. It's very complex. There's a lot of nuances to what's happening with this situation of, whether one has an abortion and what is an abortion and things like this. And I think it just, for me personally, this is me reflecting. I just felt grateful to hear about the human life and the human struggles of a politician. I think so often they hide a lot of these struggles and don't show us just how human they can be. They're just like us. They struggle through a lot of stuff. But I guess part of the show is for me to reflect on what's happening with these things, and to have guests on the show who also reflect on how it's impacting them personally and how they see it in the world. But also for you to hear some of these stories and to try to spin it not in a way where you're defending it against somebody else, against your foe or your enemy, but really to spin it and reflect it and flip it maybe is a better word, flip it, so you start to reflect on it. And you start to reflect on why or how this particular news story is impacting you. How it's impacting your life, how it's impacting your emotions, how it's impacting your decisions, how it's impacting the people in your life, and things like this. And hopefully at least be a little more honest with yourself about how this is impacting you. Maybe honest isn't the right term. Maybe a little more just deep about how it's impacting you. Because, what I see a lot in the news conversations and the conversations on the internet is that people can get we can get very defensive and angry towards each other, but not really saying we're angry, or not saying we're defensive, or not saying what we're defending, and not saying why we're defending these things, and not digging deeper into what these things are making us feel. Okay, so maybe somebody is afraid that they're going to get rid of, they're going to overturn Roe versus Wade. Why are they afraid? What are they afraid of? How is that going to impact them personally? How is it going to impact you personally? If they overturn it, maybe that make you very angry or afraid of something. What are you going to be angry or afraid of? Maybe it'll make you feel relieved. Maybe it'll make you feel grateful. Maybe it'll give you hope. Maybe it'll make you feel hopeless. Why? When you're feeling these things, what's the thought that goes along with this? What are you paying attention to when you think about these things? I don't know. I think reflection is about having deep conversation with ourselves sometimes. And I think a lot of times we don't have deep conversations with anyone, let alone ourselves. We get in similar conversations with ourselves that we do with other people. We'll say something and they'll say, "That's stupid. Why did you say that? You're such an idiot. Why would you even believe that?" And you go, "Oh, well, you're the idiot. You're the one who gave me the idea, blah, blah, blah." And it's like, what? You're doing all this in your own head? I'm doing this in my head? For those who are joining late, you may not realize what the conversation's about, but it's just about reflecting on the news instead of just absorbing it, to try to really process what's happening in the news and how it's impacting us, why we're so afraid of certain people getting elected, or what we're afraid of losing, or why we're so angry, or why we're so excited. What gives us hope when we hear about a new scientific breakthrough, or what gives us fear when we hear about a new scientific breakthrough, or what makes us feel uncertain when we hear about a new scientific breakthrough. I mean, there's so many different emotions that we can feel when we're listening to the news, or reading the news, or sharing the news with other people. Maybe we hear of a news story, we're so excited, we share it with other people, and then those people don't respond and nobody comments on it, and then we get very frustrated. Oh, why aren't people so excited with me? This is one of the best things to happen since sliced bread, la la la. But we can get so frustrated without even realizing we were excited in the first place. So I don't know. I just hope that this conversation may help you see the news in a slightly different way. That the news is like communication, is just information that's flowing into you. Information, sensory information about what's happening in the world, that may impact you directly or indirectly, and most likely is going to make you feel things and think things, or change the way that you speak. How often do we pay attention to the language we're using and question whether the language we're using is exactly the same language that somebody on the news was using? How often do we say the exact same phrases and not reference those people, but just say them? This idea that almost gaining the same language as them. Hearing them so much, hearing them speak all the time, we start to parrot their language. I think it's just natural. It's how we imitate. It's how we learn language. If I'm a kid learning how to speak, I listen to my parents, and I say, "Oh, can I have some wawa?" And they're like, "No, water." And I'm like, "Wawa," and they're like, "Water." I'm like, "Water." Water. Or if you're British and you grow up, they probably say water. And if you're like me, you live in East Africa and you get screwed up because they don't understand water. So you say water, and now you have this water conundrum in your head. Anyways, the news impacts us. It causes us to feel a lot of things. And instead of reflecting on those feelings, we often just project them onto somebody else. We watch the news and Trump says something that makes us feel angry. And so now we're feeling angry. And then somebody in our house asks us to clean the dishes or take out the garbage or something. And then we project that anger onto them. We just pass it along. Just pass it along. And we don't even realize it. We're watching the news and then blah. It's like hot potato. They threw the anger to me and I want to throw the anger to somebody else. I don't want this anymore. Here, take it. And I'm trying to get better at pausing and going, why am I feeling so angry? Or especially after I lash out, either I get angry at someone or I feel ashamed of something, or I maybe get really excited about something and overwhelm somebody with excitement or curiosity, and then pause and go, why am I feeling so curious? Or why am I feeling so excited? Is it just this person or is there something else going on? And, being at home and spending a lot of time on the internet or on TV and soaking up the opinions and the emotions and the stories of other people's lives, a lot of times I'm soaking up those emotions and I'm just passing them right on to someone else. And I don't even have any idea. I watch a debate, I get super frustrated, and then I don't sleep well at night. And I think it has to do with my work, but it probably just has to do with me being super frustrated watching the debate. Or I get really amped up watching, listening to a late night talk show, having an interview, and really want to, they're talking about this, I want to get involved, and nope. Then I try to go to bed and I'm still amped up. Or am I the only one this happens to? I'm sure I'm not. Do you watch Twitter? Do you go on Twitter late at night? Do you watch TV at night? Do you listen to the news? What about Facebook or TikTok or Instagram? Do you do this right before you go to bed? And if you do, does it ever disrupt your sleep? They say, it's because you're looking at the blue screen and this, that, and maybe it's the blue light and the screens that really impact us. But I'm wondering if it's actually more of what's on the screen. If I'm just staring at a blank screen before I go to bed, does that really disrupt my sleep? Or is it the feelings that I get from looking at a screen that's constantly changing and constantly throwing different emotions at me? Watching a movie that has tremendous amount of suspense, and so I'm there picking at my fingernails and leaning in and kind of bouncing my foot because I'm nervous. I don't know what's going to happen. So then I try to go to sleep and my leg is still bouncing, right? I'm still nervous, especially if it's a cliffhanger and I don't know what happens, or maybe I didn't finish the season, we watched House of Cards in the house, and it's 6 seasons, and it's constant what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? So going to bed with that suspense, even for a drama, even for fiction, can leave me with that emotional state. So what is it like when I listen to the news, or when you listen to the news, or get into a heated online conversation right before going to bed? How does that impact your sleep and the dreams and what you have? And I'm just talking about sleep as one example. I mean, it's not just sleep. It's almost like, how do these emotions come into us and trickle into other aspects of our lives? So we go on Twitter to just check in what's going on, and we hear people that are angry about this and angry about that and angry about this and angry about that. How much of that anger do we absorb, and then just how much of that trickles down into our work, into our romantic relationships, into our family, into our posture, into our the sales, what we do with sales or don't do with sales, into our financial situation, to our physical health, all these different aspects coming from us listening to the news, absorbing a lot of these emotions, and then just projecting them into different parts of our lives and not even being aware. And having almost zero awareness of what's happening. I don't know. Maybe y'all are more aware than I am in these things. I'm trying to get better, and I hope you are as well. You don't have to. It's not a prerequisite, but I find it interesting. I get really curious to learn about language, to learn about communication, and more than anything, to learn about how these emotions impact our lives, impact the way we communicate, impact the way we move, impact the way we um, decide things, impact the way we think, impact the way we show up in the world. So, I guess one of the ways to not absorb a lot of those emotions is to come back to what I said and take a few days and just try to mute the news. Just try to pay attention to something else. I was cleaning the garage the other day. It felt great. No news, no phone, just cleaning the garage, maybe some music. And not absorbing the emotions of other people, because I wasn't interacting with other people. I was just interacting with myself and absorbing the emotions of the things I was finding in the garage. Different story, different emotions, but so is life. Just trying to pay attention to what's happening as it happens, and pay attention to it sometimes after it happened, and go, what happened there? I hope this conversation didn't spin too much in circles. I say that a lot because I feel worried that sometimes it seems relatively clear to me, but others may not follow it very well. And also, speaking into a camera with no feedback, I'm not getting any of the rolling eyes or the nods or the positive or negative reactions to whether this is landing with people. But anyways, this was the first show at night. That's not a post-debate show. And yeah, I'll try for the rest of the week and see how it goes. Let me know in the comments, or send me a note and on Twitter or here in the YouTube comments, and would love to continue the conversation with you about the conversation with yourself and conversation with myself. Oh, language. Have a good night, y'all.